What if the voices that defined R&B generations left trails of chaos behind the music? What if fame and talent became the perfect cover for behavior that shattered lives in the shadows? The R&B world gave us some of the smoothest voices and most electrifying performances in music history. Yet beneath the platinum records and Grammy accolades, some of the genre's biggest names built legacies marked by scandal, violence, and exploitation. This is the hard truth behind the men who perfected the art of singing about love while leaving destruction in their wake. These are the 20 most evil R&B stars of all time. 20. Aaron Hall. Aaron Hall was once known for his silky voice and contributions to the New Jack Swing movement that defined late 1980s R&B. His smooth delivery made him a fixture in the genre during its most innovative period. Yet Aaron Hall fits the narrative of most evil R&B stars of all time because his personal conduct revealed something far darker than his polished vocal abilities suggested. According to a lawsuit filed by a woman named Liza Gardner, Hall was accused of drugging and sexually assaulting her and a friend during the 1990s. Gardner stated she was just 16 years old when the alleged assault occurred, making the accusation particularly disturbing given the age gap and power dynamic at play. The lawsuit named Hall alongside Sean Diddy Combs and other industry figures, suggesting a pattern of predatory behavior among connected music moguls. What made the allegations even more troubling was that they remained relatively unknown to mainstream audiences for decades, allowing Hall to maintain a career while his alleged victims suffered in silence. Hall maintained his innocence throughout the legal proceedings, though the lawsuit forced a reckoning with claims that had been buried for years. The allegations cast a shadow over his entire career and demonstrated how New Jack Swing's golden era had enabled exploitation of vulnerable young women by men in positions of power. For years, his contributions to the genre went unquestioned by critics who seemed more interested in his musical legacy than his personal conduct. Aaron Hall's case revealed that even the smoothest voice in R&B history can belong to men with predatory intentions, and that fame allowed him to operate for decades without facing serious public accountability. Before moving ahead, take a quick second to subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for the next story. 19. Brown. Bobby Brown became a household name as a member of New Edition and later as a solo superstar who dominated the late 1980s and 90s R&B landscape. His charisma and energy made him one of the biggest R&B personalities of his era, yet his legacy as one of the most evil R&B stars of all time comes from his well-documented addiction and violence toward women. His relationships with multiple women, particularly his marriage to Whitney Houston, became public battlegrounds where his dark side was impossible to ignore. Brown's struggle with cocaine and other drugs spiraled into a pattern of arrests and violent outbursts that spanned decades. Multiple women came forward with accounts of his aggressive behavior, describing physical altercations and intimidation tactics that painted a portrait of a man whose talent could not mask his toxic nature. His domestic violence against Whitney Houston became one of the most painful stories in R&B history, showing how even superstardom could not protect victims from an abuser's hands. Despite his multiple arrests and documented evidence of domestic violence, the music industry continued to book him for performances and television appearances as though his behavior was merely colorful rock and roll excess. Record labels and promoters seemed willing to overlook his criminal conduct as long as he could still generate revenue. His influence on his family created generational patterns of dysfunction, showing how his abuse extended beyond immediate victims to affect future generations. Bobby Brown's story demonstrates how fame and commercial viability allowed him to escape real accountability for years, even as his victims suffered the lasting trauma of his violence while watching their abuser maintain a successful career. 18. Marques Houston. Marques Houston emerged as a talented member of IMX, an R&B boy band that found success during the 1990s and early 2000s. His smooth vocals and dancing ability made him stand out among male R&B performers of that generation. Yet Houston's inclusion among the most evil R&B stars of all time stems from deeply disturbing allegations about his relationship with a teenager under his legal guardianship, revealing predatory behavior that remained largely hidden from public view. Houston reportedly began a romantic and sexual relationship with a girl who was just 13 years old when he met her, with Houston being in his 20s at the time. He became her legal guardian, placing himself in a position of immense power and control that he allegedly exploited for sexual access to a child. The age gap and power dynamic made this situation textbook abuse, as Houston used his guardian status to prey on someone who could not legally consent and had no family to protect her. For years, Houston maintained a successful career while these allegations remained relatively unknown to mainstream audiences. He appeared on reality television shows and continued performing at venues across the country, suggesting that the entertainment industry was either unaware of his conduct or indifferent to it. The lack of public outcry allowed him to operate with minimal consequences, continuing to build a career as though his personal life held no accountability. Marks Houston's case demonstrates how guardianship laws can be weaponized by predators, and how the R&B industry has protected abusers from scrutiny as long as they continued to generate commercial value. 17. Raz B. Raz B was a founding member of B2K, the blockbuster R&B boy band that captured the hearts of teenagers in the early 2000s with platinum-selling albums and sold-out world tours. The group achieved massive commercial success during their peak years. As part of the narrative of the most evil R&B stars of all time, Raz B's darker story involves allegations that he suffered abuse at the hands of authority figures connected to the group, raising serious questions about exploitation within the industry. Raz B publicly alleged that he had been abused by the group's choreographer, Chris Stokes, claiming inappropriate and predatory conduct had occurred during his time with B2K. These allegations emerged years after the group's initial breakup, forcing fans and the industry to reconsider what had transpired behind the scenes during B2K's peak commercial years. The allegations painted a troubling picture of how young performers could be vulnerable to those in positions of power and authority within the entertainment industry. The controversy surrounding Stokes and B2K revealed systemic issues within the music industry, where young male artists were placed in situations where they could be exploited by older men in power. Raz B's willingness to speak out eventually led to further investigations and conversations about accountability. However, for years, the full scope of what allegedly occurred remained hidden from public view, allowing abuse to continue unchecked. Raz B's decision to relocate to China represented an attempt to escape the trauma and industry politics that had haunted his career, demonstrating how deeply the experience affected his life and forced him to abandon the industry altogether. 16. Lil Fizz. Lil Fizz was another member of B2K who found initial success as part of the group's tight harmonies and synchronized performances that made them a teen sensation. After the group broke up, he pursued a solo career while remaining involved in the entertainment industry through television appearances and collaborations. His placement among the most evil R&B stars of all time reflects his proximity to and apparent awareness of the concerning situations that occurred within B2K's operations during its peak years. During B2K's initial run, allegations of inappropriate conduct by authority figures in the group's inner circle emerged, yet Lil Fizz appeared to navigate the industry without directly facing accusations of his own misconduct. However, his continued association with industry figures and collaboration with some of those connected to B2K raised serious questions about complicity and the culture that allowed exploitation to continue unchecked. His ability to separate himself from the scandal while maintaining his career suggested selective industry accountability. After the group's breakup, Lil Fizz appeared on VH1 reality television shows and maintained a public presence in the entertainment industry, suggesting an ability to move beyond the controversies that plagued others from his generation. His involvement with Omarion on various projects and appearances at industry events showed that the consequences for those connected to problematic figures remained relatively minimal compared to what victims endured. The disparity in accountability was stark and troubling. Lil Fizz's trajectory illustrates how the entertainment industry compartmentalizes scandal, allowing some figures to escape serious consequences while others become permanently marked by their associations and experiences. 15. Lloyd emerged in the mid-2000s as a promising young R&B vocalist known for his smooth delivery and youthful appeal to teenage audiences across the country. His hits like Get It Shawty and You made him a fixture on radio stations and in youth-oriented programming during the 2006 to 2009 period. Though Lloyd has maintained a relatively low profile compared to his contemporaries, his presence here reflects the broader pattern of young male R&B singers who navigated an industry filled with temptation, exploitation, and systemic abuse that defined the most evil R&B stars of all time. Lloyd's career never reached the sustained heights that seemed possible during his initial breakthrough into mainstream radio and television. His retreat from the public spotlight and relative absence from the kind of scandals that plagued his peers raises questions about whether he deliberately chose a quieter path or simply faded due to changing commercial preferences. Without major public allegations or arrests attached to his name, Lloyd represents a different category within R&B history. Unlike some of his contemporaries who faced legal troubles or made headlines for violent incidents, Lloyd chose a path of relative anonymity after his initial fame began to decline in the early 2010s. His ability to disappear from public scrutiny stands in stark contrast to the continuous stream of scandals that have defined other R&B stars from his generation. Perhaps his quieter journey indicates wisdom in avoiding industry excess, or perhaps his obscurity simply allowed less light to be shed on his personal conduct. Lloyd's story serves as a reminder that not every R&B artist from the 2000s faced public reckoning, yet the era itself was marked by an industry culture that enabled bad behavior for those willing to engage in it. 14. Omarion was the face of B2K, the frontman whose vocal talents and dancing ability made him the most commercially prominent member of the group. As the leader of one of the biggest R&B acts of the early 2000s, his career trajectory after B2K's breakup showed that even the most successful young performers from that era carried trauma from their time in the industry. His placement among the most evil R&B stars of all time reflects not his own personal wrongdoing, but his complicated relationship with the B2K experience and the industry that created the environment where exploitation could occur. Following B2K's initial success and subsequent controversial breakup, Omarion pursued a solo career that produced platinum records and consistent touring opportunities throughout his adult life. Yet his later involvement with reality television and his public disputes with former bandmates revealed ongoing tensions stemming from their shared past. His solo album O went platinum immediately upon release, proving his individual talent could stand apart from the group's collective brand, yet that the shadow of B2K's controversies continued to follow him. Omarion's continued work in the entertainment industry and his eventual reunion with B2K demonstrated his resilience despite the trauma of his early career. He managed to build a successful adult life separate from the group, suggesting an ability to compartmentalize and move forward. Yet his career trajectory was undeniably shaped by the darker aspects of his early fame, showing how young performers were affected by their proximity to predatory behavior. Omarion represents the generation of young R&B performers who survived an era of exploitation and emerged with careers intact, yet forever changed by their experiences in an industry that did not protect them. 13. Genuine established himself as one of R&B's most sensual and successful performers, with his silky voice and distinctive style influencing the genre for decades. His album sales reached into the millions, and his performances became iconic moments in R&B history. Yet Genuine's career took on different dimensions as the most evil R&B stars of all time, when the industry's treatment of his work and the broader culture surrounding R&B masculinity became subject to scrutiny and examination. During the height of his career in the 1990s and 2000s, Genuine's music often explored themes of sexuality and desire with artistry that pushed boundaries. Yet the industry surrounding him and other male R&B stars of that era enabled behavior both on stage and off that reflected problematic attitudes toward women and consent. His artistic legacy remains separate from the broader industry patterns, yet he benefited from an ecosystem that allowed exploitation to flourish unchecked. Ginuwine's later career showed his ability to maintain relevance and touring opportunities despite changes in the music industry and shifting cultural conversations about accountability. His work with producers and collaborators continued throughout the 2000s and into the 2010s, suggesting sustained commercial viability. His longevity in the industry allowed him to witness the evolution of the industry from one that enabled abuse to one that increasingly faced questions about its practices. Ginuwine's inclusion reflects how the entire era of late 1990s and early 2000s R&B was shaped by industry practices that protected men while endangering women and young people. 12. Tyrese Gibson launched his career from a Coca-Cola commercial in 1994 and quickly became a major R&B force with his debut album and numerous platinum hits. His charisma and looks made him as much a celebrity as his music did, and he built a successful acting career alongside his music. His story within the most evil R&B stars of all time reflects less explicit scandals than some of his peers, yet his presence here demonstrates the broader industry culture that shaped R&B during his era of prominence. Tyrese's career showed longevity and success that many of his contemporary R&B peers did not achieve, with continued touring and recording opportunities extending well into the 2010s and beyond. His involvement in major film franchises gave him a platform that extended beyond music into mainstream Hollywood. Yet, his career trajectory was shaped by an industry that accepted and normalized behavior that would later become subject to public scrutiny and moral reckonings. His public persona and the way he navigated his celebrity status offered a contrast to some of his peers who faced more explicit controversies and legal troubles. Tyrese managed his career with a degree of caution that suggested either greater respect for boundaries or simply more awareness of potential consequences. His ability to maintain a career in both music and film suggested acceptance and protection from industry gatekeepers. Tyrese represents the R&B performers of his generation who navigated industry excess without facing major public scandals, yet benefited from an industry culture that enabled exploitation by others. 11. Nayo emerged in the mid-2000s as a talented R&B vocalist and songwriter with impressive technical abilities and consistent commercial success. His hits dominated radio throughout the late 2000s and early 2010s, establishing him as one of the decade's defining R&B voices. Yet his placement among the most evil R&B stars of all time reflects not explicit personal scandals, but his position within an R&B industry that had become subject to increasing scrutiny. Nayo's career demonstrated the ability to maintain mainstream success and touring opportunities throughout decades of industry shifts and changing consumer preferences. His songwriting talents allowed him to contribute to other artists' records, giving him additional influence and income streams. His presence in the industry during periods of increasing accountability conversations about sexual assault and exploitation showed an artist who managed to avoid major public allegations. His collaborations with other R&B and pop artists throughout his career gave him broad industry visibility and protection from the kind of focused scrutiny that attached to some of his peers. His work with producers and other artists demonstrated professional respect that may have translated into protection from public controversies. His ability to maintain a successful career without major legal troubles or public scandals set him apart from many of his generational peers. Nayo's inclusion reflects how the R&B industry of the 2000s and 2010s created stars who managed to avoid explicit public scandals while benefiting from an industry culture that often protected men regardless of their behavior. 10. Tank emerged as an R&B vocalist in the late 1990s and established himself as a consistent performer and recording artist throughout the 2000s. His smooth vocals and R&B sensibility connected with audiences, and his touring presence remained steady even as his commercial prominence fluctuated. His placement among the most evil R&B stars of all time reflects patterns of behavior and industry protection rather than explicit public scandals that captured mainstream headlines. Tank's career showed remarkable longevity compared to many of his R&B contemporaries, with continued touring and recording opportunities throughout decades of industry change. His presence in the R&B community remained respected despite the various controversies that surrounded the genre. His ability to maintain relationships with other R&B artists and industry figures suggested respect and acceptance within his professional circles. His lower public profile compared to some of his more commercially dominant peers may have protected him from the kind of scrutiny that attached to bigger names. His focus on touring and live performances gave him income and relevance that did not require constant mainstream radio play or media attention. His career demonstrated how some R&B artists managed to sustain themselves through touring and live work without needing the protection of major label backing. Tank represents R&B performers who maintain careers within the genre's touring circuits without achieving the kind of superstardom that invited intense public scrutiny and media attention. 9. August Alsina. August Alsina emerged in the early 2010s as a promising R&B vocalist with significant potential and a record deal with Def Jam. His initial singles found success on radio, and he built a fan base through touring and social media presence. Yet Alsina's career as one of the most evil R&B stars of all time took a dramatic turn when he publicly claimed a romantic relationship with actress Jada Pinkett Smith during her separation from Will Smith, a revelation that shocked audiences and altered his public perception forever. Alsina alleged that Will Smith had given him permission to pursue a relationship with Jada, though Smith later denied this claim categorically. The scandal created enormous backlash against Alsina, with audiences struggling to reconcile his claims with the Smiths' public denials. His credibility was questioned, and his commercial viability suffered significantly as a result of the public dispute. The incident revealed uncomfortable truths about power dynamics and manipulation within celebrity circles. Beyond the Jada Pinkett Smith situation, Alsina has faced additional allegations over time, including grooming allegations involving younger individuals that he has denied. His career never recovered from the initial scandal, and subsequent controversies further damaged his public image and commercial prospects. His ability to maintain any platform in the entertainment industry seemed contingent on the protection of certain industry figures. August Alsina's story demonstrates how one scandal can fundamentally alter a career trajectory, and how allegations of manipulation and inappropriate relationships can permanently mark an artist's legacy. 8. Jodeci. Jodeci was one of the 1990s most successful R&B groups, with multiple platinum albums and a devoted fan base that elevated them to superstar status. Their smooth harmonies and sophisticated production created some of the decade's most beloved R&B music. Yet, Jodeci's inclusion among R&B stars of all time emerged when member Devance Swing was implicated in a sexual assault lawsuit involving a minor that dated back decades, revealing exploitation that had remained hidden for years. According to a lawsuit filed by a woman named Liza Gardner, Devante Swing was accused of facilitating and participating in the sexual assault of a girl who was just 16 years old in the 1990s. Swing allegedly served as her co-guardian while being complicit in her abuse, using his position of trust to enable exploitation. The allegations painted Swing as a predatory figure who leveraged his fame and industry position to gain access to vulnerable youth. Swing has not publicly responded to the allegations, as he remained touring with Jodeci during the time the lawsuit was amended to include his name. The group's continued touring and recording activities suggested minimal consequences from the industry or audiences. The ability of the group to continue operating while facing serious allegations reflected how R&B stars have historically escaped accountability despite public knowledge of misconduct. Jodeci's legacy as one of the most influential R&B groups of their era is now inseparable from the allegations against Devante Swing, showing how personal conduct can permanently alter how history views an artist's contributions. 7. Tekashi 6ix9ine. Tekashi 6 emerged as a polarizing figure in hip-hop and rap music during the late 2010s with his controversial persona and provocative behavior. His music, appearance, and public conduct generated constant headlines, making him one of the most discussed artists of his time. Yet 6ix9ine's status as one of the most evil figures in R&B and rap history stems primarily from his conviction for the sexual exploitation of a child, a crime that revealed his true character beneath the provocative persona. In 2015, 6ix9ine pleaded guilty to the use of a child in a sexual performance, admitting to filming a 13-year-old girl engaging in sexual activity. The crime represented one of the most serious forms of exploitation, involving the creation of child sexual abuse material. His guilty plea and subsequent sentence reflected the severity of his misconduct, yet he later received a reduced sentence and early release due to cooperation with federal authorities in other criminal cases. Throughout his subsequent career, 6ix9ine has faced additional arrests and legal troubles, including allegations of gang involvement, assault, and domestic violence. His continued ability to record music and generate content, despite his criminal history, demonstrated the music industry's willingness to work with artists regardless of their serious criminal conduct. His snitch conviction and cooperation with authorities further complicated his standing within hip-hop culture while allowing him to avoid lengthy prison time. Tekashi 6ix9ine represents the ultimate example of how the music industry can protect someone with serious criminal convictions, allowing them to continue their career with minimal, meaningful consequences. 6. Raymond Usher became one of the biggest R&B superstars of all time, with multiple Grammy Awards, platinum albums, and an influential career spanning decades. His talent, charisma, and business acumen made him a respected figure in the entertainment industry. Yet Usher's inclusion among the most evil R&B stars of all time reflects his complicated relationship with other industry figures and the problematic patterns he was exposed to or enabled during his career. Usher's mentorship of younger artists, particularly Justin Bieber, raised questions when Bieber later expressed feeling that he had been introduced to Sean Diddy Combs and the culture surrounding him at too young an age. Usher's role in facilitating Bieber's entry into Diddy's orbit became subject to scrutiny as Diddy's misconduct was exposed in federal trials. Usher's defense of Diddy years later, claiming the mogul had been misrepresented, demonstrated his willingness to protect someone accused of serious crimes. Usher has faced his own allegations over the years, including herpes lawsuits that settled out of court, and questions about his awareness of industry misconduct. His continued success and respect, despite various controversies, suggested that his superstar status protected him from the kind of accountability faced by less commercially dominant figures. His ability to maintain his position while supporting others accused of serious crimes showed how power and popularity could shield industry figures. Usher Raymond represents how even respected industry figures can be complicit in enabling exploitation through their choices and public statements of support for accused perpetrators. 5. Diddy Sean Combs, known as Diddy, built one of the most successful entertainment empires in history through Bad Boy Records, music production, and various business ventures. His influence on hip-hop and R&B culture cannot be overstated, as he discovered and developed some of the biggest artists of multiple generations. Yet Diddy's status as the most destructive figure in this narrative stems from the extraordinary scope of his documented criminal conduct and exploitation, which finally resulted in federal conviction and imprisonment. In 2024, after a dramatic raid on his homes and months of investigation, Diddy was arrested and charged with sex trafficking, racketeering, and transportation to engage in prostitution. Federal prosecutors alleged that Diddy had orchestrated violent sex trafficking schemes involving the coercion of women and men into sexual activity, often recorded without consent. Video evidence from 2016 showed Diddy brutally assaulting his then-girlfriend Cassie Ventura in a hotel hallway, providing undeniable proof of his violent conduct. Diddy's trial in 2025 featured 34 witnesses who testified about crimes ranging from drug distribution to physical abuse to sexual assault. The evidence presented at trial documented his pattern of violence, coercion, and manipulation that spanned decades. In October 2025, Diddy was convicted on 2 counts of transportation to engage in prostitution and sentenced to 50 months in federal prison, though he was acquitted of racketeering, conspiracy, and sex trafficking charges. Sean Diddy Combs represents the apex of evil behavior within R&B and hip-hop history, a man whose exploitation of others operated on an industrial scale and remained largely hidden from public view until federal investigators began their criminal probe. 4. R. Kelly. R. Kelly was one of the most commercially successful R&B artists of all time, with multi-platinum albums, Grammy Awards, and an enormous catalog of hits that influenced the entire genre. His contribution to R&B music cannot be separated from his identity as a prolific predator whose crimes shocked the world when they finally resulted in conviction. His trajectory from superstardom to imprisonment represents one of the most dramatic falls in music history, yet his conduct remained open secret within the industry for decades before federal prosecution. Throughout the 1990s and 2000s, numerous allegations and lawsuits detailed R. Kelly's pattern of sexual abuse targeting young girls and women. A videotape released in 1994 showed Kelly engaged in sexual activity with a minor, yet he was acquitted in a 2002 trial despite video evidence. His ability to escape accountability for years, despite overwhelming evidence, reflected the entertainment industry's protection of commercially valuable figures and the difficulty of prosecuting sexual abuse cases. In 2019, the documentary Surviving R. Kelly finally shifted public perception, with detailed accounts from multiple victims describing decades of abuse and coercion. The documentary's impact led to renewed federal investigation and criminal charges. In 2021, Kelly was convicted of 9 counts, including racketeering and sex trafficking. In 2022, he was convicted of additional charges of child sexual abuse material production. His sentences totaled over 20 years in federal prison, ensuring he would spend the remainder of his life incarcerated. R. Kelly's conviction and imprisonment represent a watershed moment where the R&B industry finally faced accountability for harboring one of its most prolific predators for decades. 3. Chris Brown emerged as a promising young R&B and pop star in the 20s with massive commercial success and a devoted fan base. His dancing, singing ability, and charisma made him one of the decade's biggest emerging talents. Yet Chris Brown's career took a devastating turn when he assaulted his then-girlfriend Rihanna in 2009, an incident that should have ended his career, but instead demonstrated the music industry's capacity to protect violent men as long as they remained commercially viable. Brown pleaded guilty to felony assault for the February 2009 attack on Rihanna, during which he punched and struck her repeatedly while driving. The incident shocked the world and sparked conversations about intimate partner violence. Yet within months, Brown returned to recording, touring, and performing with the music industry, and many fans since seemingly willing to forgive his violence. His comeback was remarkable for its speed and completeness, suggesting that his commercial viability trumped any genuine accountability. Since the Rihanna assault, Brown has accumulated an extraordinary pattern of additional allegations and arrests. He was charged with rape in Paris, sued for sexual assault by multiple women, arrested for assault with a deadly weapon, implicated in the beating of Frank Ocean, and faced restraining orders from multiple women alleging physical abuse and threats. His pattern of violence toward women became as consistent as his music releases, yet record labels continued to sign him, venues continued to book him, and streaming platforms continued to promote him. Chris Brown represents the ultimate failure of the music industry to enforce accountability, as a man with documented history of violence against women remained commercially viable and celebrated despite accumulated evidence of predatory behavior. 2. Trey Songz emerged in the mid-20s as a talented R&B vocalist with impressive technical abilities and consistent commercial success. His smooth voice and traditional R&B sensibility made him a fan favorite, and he built a significant fan base through touring and collaborations. Yet, Trey Songz' inclusion as one of the most evil R&B stars of all time reflects his documented pattern of violent conduct and sexual assault allegations that span years and demonstrate a persistence of predatory behavior. Beginning in 2022, multiple women publicly accused Songz of sexual assault, alleging he had coerced or forced them into sexual activity without consent. These allegations accumulated from different accusers across different time frames, creating a pattern that suggested systematic predatory behavior. Beyond the sexual assault allegations, Songz faced multiple arrests for assault, property destruction, and violent altercations. In December 2025, he was arrested in New York on assault and criminal mischief charges after separate incidents at nightclubs, where he allegedly punched an employee and damaged significant property. Trey Songz has maintained his innocence regarding all allegations and has not been convicted of the sexual assault charges. However, his pattern of arrests and the accumulation of allegations from multiple accusers created a portrait of a man with serious issues regarding impulse control, anger management, and respect for boundaries. His continued ability to perform and record, despite these allegations, demonstrated the entertainment industry's continued protection of commercially viable R&B artists regardless of their conduct. Trey Songz represents contemporary examples of how R&B stars can accumulate multiple serious allegations, yet continue their careers largely unimpeded by meaningful industry consequences. 1. Sean Diddy Combs. Sean Diddy Combs stands alone as the most evil figure in R&B history due to the extraordinary scope and severity of his documented criminal conduct. Unlike other figures on this list whose misconduct remained partially hidden or contested, Diddy's crimes were prosecuted in federal court with overwhelming evidence presented to a jury. His conviction and imprisonment represent a genuine moment where an R&B industry figure faced meaningful accountability for years of exploitation and abuse. Diddy's criminal enterprise spanned decades, with victims describing coercion, violence, and exploitation that began in the 1990s and continued through the 2010s. His ability to operate for so long despite allegations reflected the industry's consistent protection of wealthy, powerful men who remained commercially valuable. The federal prosecution finally pierced this protection, presenting evidence that could not be dismissed or negotiated away through settlement agreements and lawyers. His 2025 conviction and 50-month prison sentence represent the culmination of years of investigation and the willingness of multiple victims to testify against him despite the power differential and industry pressure. His case demonstrated that even the most powerful industry figures could face federal prosecution when evidence was overwhelming and investigators were committed to pursuing justice. Diddy's legacy as the most evil R&B star of all time is secured not just by the nature of his crimes, but by the fact that he finally faced consequences when so many others escaped accountability. The stories behind R&B's biggest names reveal an industry that protected men while endangering women and young people for decades. From assault to exploitation to trafficking, the pattern remained consistent despite changing eras and evolving public consciousness. These are the true legacies hidden behind platinum records and sold-out arenas, because the real stories behind the icons often involve darkness that the music itself was designed to conceal. Word count 482.